Welcome to this next lesson where we will be exploring some further hands-on practicals that you can actually follow along. Now, this particular lecture is about the understanding that AI is not just about copying and pasting, it's actually more than that. So, without access to ChatGPT, if you're following along with the free account or the paid account, what I want to demonstrate here is how AI is beyond just copying and pasting. So let's say we want AI to help us to do something. What I'm going to do is we're going to upload a file and we're just going to ask ChatGPT to help us to do something. Now, before we upload the file, I'm just going to quickly show you something that is important. Remember the whole concept of responsible use of AI. So I have this work folder that has some of these documents that I'm going to be using throughout the course. Now you can see that I have this folder called anonymized, and it's just an exact copy of these folders, but obviously whatever content is in it is going to be anonymized. So if we look at, for instance, one of the files called client update request, which we would actually be using. So this one on the left is the one that is not anonymized. So if you look at this email thread, which is about a client update request, you can see that we have the client name and all that. We have Claire Devon from this company, North Shore Holdings. Um, our company is Brightspark. And, we have so many other personal information in there that you ideally want to sanitize before you bring them into the model. And the one on the right, you can see that it actually has a lot of anonymized information. So, for instance, it's the same document, like for like. So, we have Claire Devlin, and from here, it's rather saying client contact. So, this is how you anonymize data if you want to be bringing in information into ChatGPT. If that's more into the realms of if you're not really having a corporate infrastructure that allows you to have your own private space to use some of these resources and you're using the public one, then you want to be bringing in these kinds of information. But if you have a proper infrastructure in place, enterprise level, whereby everything is confined within your own controlled environment, then I think you be easy to import some of these things without any issues because everything is confined within your own corporate environment. But for our test, we would be, just for the sake of it, we would be using this one. So I am going to upload this file into our chat. So I'll just go to files and I will go to, let me just go back to the right path. So we have Brightspark, we have the anonymized, it's already expanded, and then we have client update request. Okay. So that file is uploaded, and what we want to do is we want to just give it a basic prompt and say, sort of like, just draft some sort of email reply to this, draft a professional reply to this client update request. Again, I'm just going to take you back to the email content itself. So basically, it's about a client update request. So a client is asking for updates, and that has come to us, and we need to actually come up with a proper update that they can forward to the client. So that's the email. That's where the thread has gotten to, and we have to reply it. But then there's enough context in the thread that can give some information about how the tone and the language and all that needs to be paid attention to when drafting that. So basically, we're having this query, and they need our team has an internal meeting at 1 p.m. and it would be helpful if we could let them know whether the request is still okay, or is still on track and all that. So this is just a hypothetical scenario, and I'm just throwing it into the model to say, can you actually help me draft a reply to that? Ideally, you want to be adding other documents, but this is just for a demonstration on that AI is more than just copying and pasting. So if I just ask it to just draft a professional reply to this client request, and it has given me kind of straightforward, hi, thanks for checking in, the request is still being reviewed, we expect to have further updates and all that, and it's given us other options that it could use to make this however we want it, right? So this is generic. This is just it trying to come up with a reply based on our own personalization settings and all that. Now, this is usable, but it is generic. What if we can actually tell it how we draft things, how we write things? So obviously, this email that we gave it as a document to just pay attention to and then give us a reply, it has assumed it understands what we want to say and how we want to say it. But then it's generic in the sense that it hasn't really, I haven't given it how my tone and how my structure looks like. How do I write my emails? So, what we need to do is, I am going to go back to this and we're just going to use it to analyze some of how my past emails look like. And then we can compare it to this. But before we do that, we need to bring in some of those emails. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just attach a couple of references. So I'm just going to go back to the same path, documents. If I go to anonymize, if I instead of inbox threads, I think I'll go to reference examples. So these reference examples, they would be my references. So if I select these, just for it to see how I write. So these reference examples basically are documents that I would have written, things that have to do with me, how I write things, how I sound, how I, we would have a look at those at the moment. So I'm just going to open those. And then the prompt that we're going to give it is, ideally, since this is generic, we don't want it to be generic. We want it to actually sound like us. So we're giving it reference documents that relate to how I would have written emails in the past, how I've written reports in the past, how I sound and all that. And we wanted to analyze them and actually tell us what it thinks what those tenets are. So I'm just going to give it a quick prompt. I have this in a cheat sheet, which you would have access to as well. So I'm basically telling it I'm giving you 3 reference examples plus 1 current task. First, analyze the reference examples and tell me the recurring tone and recurring structure, how updates, actions, or risks handled, all that. So all of that would be in this. But the key point here is these documents would be from me. This is from my past examples, how I would have written a report from last week, how I would have written an email reply relating to the similar topic to someone else in the past 2 months, something like that, right? But we needed to analyze that. So I would get it to analyze that, and then we see what it comes back with. So I'm just going to hit send. So from what it gathers, it has gotten that my recurring tone is more calm, reassuring, and when it comes to how I structure my formatting, I like to always give a brief context at the top, and then I talk about current status, actions on the way, risks, and then I talk about next steps. So all my structure when it comes to reporting, like that, and how I communicate updates is that I keep things at the higher level and all that. Ideally, yes, you can be for us to validate if this is actually the case, would have to manually open those 3 documents, which you can, and then it's up to you to validate to see, is it right that whatever those documents contain, do they match these? But I know what they are and I understand that they do. And based on that, you can see that it has now tried to help me with an email reply with what it has now learned. So what you need to now look at is compare this reply. You see the way it talks about, thanks for checking in, and then talks about current position and, this kind of formatting. If we scroll up to this one, you'd realize there's a sharp contrast. There is, it now has more information. It now has more, how I'm structuring the email, not particularly with the content, because obviously we didn't really give it a lot. But then you can see that there's a sharp contrast, and now it looks like how I would write my emails. Now, let's just have a look at some of those emails. So I'll be opening some of those files. So if if I go back to my Finder, so the three documents, so if I go to, let me not use anonymized, let me go to the main one. If I go to my reference examples and I go to, let me open these three. So if I highlight this, I open. So these three, weekly operations, leadership follow, and internal service update. So if you look at this, it has discern how I write my operation summaries, and it has discern how I write my internal service delay updates. And you see the way it talks about current position. Hi all. So this is being me. This is how I sound like, what's happening now. And it has now adopted, because we want an email reply draft, it has now adopted that kind of, applicable tenet to this. So it means whoever receives that email, they'll know that actually this is from me, because it's still having the same style and format. Okay, so that's what we want to call out about AI being more than just copying and pasting. I got it to analyze from my own particular references, and then by that understanding, it then gave me a reply that actually suits the way I would write my emails. That's the key lesson here, that AI is more than just copying and pasting. You have to be meticulous. You have to give it enough context so that it gives you enough output that you don't really want to waste your time, proofreading and rewriting the whole thing. So that's a key lesson here. So I'll see you in the next lesson.